Hello and welcome to your infinite scrolling tutorial. So before we start, what is infinite scrolling? The reason why you need to use it actually is what we should start with, or that you should use it, you don't necessarily have to, is because if you're reading data from a server, you don't really want to read in all of your data in one big chunk. It'll slow down your program, and this becomes a big issue, especially on mobile websites. So what some products do is they implement infinite scrolling to load in only certain chunks at a time, so the user doesn't have to download all of the data before they can use the site. And it's a good solution, and it also looks really cool. So I figured I'd show you how to do it in case you wanted to use it. Now we're going to load in some Facebook posts. Last time, in the last two tutorials, we learned how to log into Facebook and access your graph with the /me endpoint. But we're going to change a little bit. I'm going to do /slate and tablets /posts. I'm going to get all my my Facebook pages posts. And I found that through the Graph API Explorer, which you can go ahead and modify to fit whatever you want. You can get any posts that you want. But make sure they are posts, because the code that we're going to write isn't really going to work unless they're posts. And before we do any other coding, I want to just kind of log the argument here, because I don't really know what it's going to look like. And we're going to comment out that because it's irrelevant. Also, we want to change our HTTP calls to HTTPS because it throws some annoying errors in Google Drive, and I want to get rid of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too, if I can. Good. Looks like it's set. Okay. That said, we should save and then go to your Google folder. And you'll want to delete your first file and upload your new one. And then it should be done. You go to your Google Drive account, and we want to inspect element. I messed up somewhere. Maybe line 55. What is this? Oh, yes. What is that? What are you? Oh, I commented this out when I shouldn't have. Okay. Gotta do it again. Okay. All right. So you'll get a jQuery error, which we'll fix in a little bit. But for the most part, we get this big object. It's an array of data, and if you open up that array, you'll see each post as an object. So this is going to be really useful for writing our infinite scrolling code, because it tells us exactly what properties in each object in the array we can access which data from. All right, so let's talk about what we want to do. Let's keep it simple. I'm just going to load infinite scrolling content of post title and post text. But you could use this data structure here to get anything else you want. You can get the caption, you can get the time, you can get pictures from it. You can really get a lot of information. But we're going to keep it simple because that's all we'll need. Maybe we'll include the picture too. That's all we need. All right, first things first. All this code in the JavaScript here, we need to make a new JavaScript file. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to make sure we save it properly. We need to make a new folder. We'll call it JS. We'll call it my.js.js. Okay. Next is we're going to take all of this out of here and put it into my.js. I just copied and pasted. Third is, instead of these script tags, which we definitely don't want to have, we're going to script at the bottom. Cool. All right, and of course the other thing that we need is we definitely want to incorporate Bootstrap here, especially since we're going to be testing this on a mobile product. We want to make sure we get Bootstrap downloaded and installed. So we're going to go ahead and get that going. Get bootstrap.com. Download Bootstrap. We'll get the basic version. Okay, and I'm actually just going to take all of these folders. We want all of them to go to our quarter 3 right there. Oh, whoops. Looks like we just need to get these files instead of the folder, because we already have a JavaScript folder. All right, cool. All right, that's that. We also need to make sure we include the Bootstrap headers, so we're going to go ahead and take them out of the basic template and put them into our document. And we also need the jQuery and the Bootstrap JavaScript at the bottom. Sweet. All right, that's good. So now that we got jQuery, we got Bootstrap going, all this is good. Fantastic. We may not use that for this project, but we're definitely going to use it during a later part of the infinite scrolling tutorial. Okay, cool. So we have some information from our last portion of Facebook. I'm actually just going to get rid of this. We don't want to show your ID anymore, all that stuff. So we can go ahead and get rid of that. That'll leave us with Facebook login authentication sample. Let's change that. We're going to call this infinite scroll. We're going to keep the login button. It's probably a good idea. So we'll keep that. Right. And we're also going to include a new div here. And we're going to call this div, we'll give it an ID of main container. And this is where all of our information is going to go. Now, if we want it to be Bootstrap enabled, we also need to put it inside a container. And then notice how we're not going to include another row here like we normally do with Bootstrap, because we're actually going to do that in JavaScript. We kind of need to do that every time we load information. I'll show you how that works in just a little bit. But we do need a div where we're going to put all of our main information, right? Cool. So now we have our main page set up. We'll probably need some CSS eventually. We don't have any yet, but that's okay. We'll tackle that in the next tutorial. And then in our JavaScript here, this is where we're going to need to do the meat of the work. So we're actually going to be getting rid of that stuff that we commented out before. Okay, and that leaves us with our response handler here. We can keep these. This toggles whether or not we're going to display the information based on whether the user is logged in or not. But this is where our response handler goes. So how are we going to respond? The way that infinite scrolling works is pretty simple. Basically, you check where the page is scrolled to, and there's a jQuery function to do that. You check where the page is scrolled to, and you load a certain number of content items based on kind of how much data they take up. So like a pretty standard number is between 8 and 16. If you have really big content items, you choose 8. If you have smaller ones, you choose 16. And by the time the user gets to the bottom of scrolling, you should be ready to load more. Okay? So the best technique, I'm going to choose 8 for this, just for fun. And the best way to handle this is to kind of set yourself up with some variables in the beginning. Right? So that's what I'm going to do at the top here. So we're going to do variable current index. This is going to keep track of where the entry loop that we're getting from Facebook should kind of be stuck at, because in our response handler it's not going to remember. Right, so we want to remember current index is equal to 0. We also want to set a placeholder for our entries, what's going to be array. Okay, because we don't want to have to continually ask Facebook for more information. So we want to ask it once, store that information, and then if we want, we can change it later. But otherwise, we're just going to keep looking at our own local data instead of asking Facebook for more. All right, so that's some of the variables we need to set up. We might need more global ones at the top. We're also going to need some new functions. Okay, we're going to need at least one function that's going to handle the data once we get it. The reason why we want to make a separate function for this is because we may want to load more data in the future. So we're going to make a function called, let's say, load data, and it's going to take an argument called data. Okay, what we want to do is we want to call that function from within our response handler. So we're going to call load data from within this response handler using the argument that's called me in this case. You can call whatever you want. I'm going to take this console log and put it here. And instead of console log me, it should say console log data. All right, cool. Nothing different yet. It's just instead of handling the data in here, so we don't have to mess with this, we're going to do it in a separate function. All right. So handling data is pretty simple. You have to make sure you use a for loop. So we're going to start off with a basic for loop. So variable I equals 0. But instead of 0, we're actually going to set it equal to current index. Talk about why later. Right, we're going to go as long as I is less than. Now, here's where you want to decide how many entries you want to load at once. I said 8, so we're going to say current index plus 8. And then add 1 to I every time. All right, so this starts I at whatever value our current index is at. It makes it go 8 times, and it adds 1 each time. This last step is really important. Many people will forget this. Right before your load data function is over, or excuse me, right before your for loop is over, no, I lied, sorry, I lied again, okay. Right before your load data function is over, set current index equal to current index plus 8. This will ensure that you keep track of where your for loop should be starting at each time you load new data. Okay, now we can kind of forget about that. Cool. So we still haven't done much, but we have done a lot of setup work. Let's go back into our console and see what we need to get out of here. So the response is an object, and we need to get the data out of that. So let's make a variable right above our for loop, variable data array equals, and it should say data dot. I'm going to change this. We're going to call it data object, just because things are going to get confusing. So data object dot data. Okay, object data is an array. Good. So data array is now an array, which is good. All right. So that is fantastic. Now, this is how we could handle it directly from the response handler. But I think what might be better is if we set entries equal to data array and just work on entries from now on. So we're going to take data array out of here and we're going to put it right under, excuse me, right before our load data call. And instead of data object dot data, we'll have me dot data from right here, the argument. And then we'll set entries equals data array. And now we don't even need this argument. Isn't that wonderful? Fantastic. Cool. All right, so now we have our global variable entries that has every object in this array permanently stored. That's great. All right, so now in our for loop, I is equal to current index. So what we want to do is we want to get a current entry value. And that's going to be equal to entries at I. That current entry should be a dictionary with this sort of structure. All right, so we said that we wanted to get what do we want? We wanted the title, right? The post name. So let's do that first. So let's get variable entry title, and that's going to be current entry dot, I think it's called name. We also wanted to get the text, so let's get the description. How about that? Equals current entry dot description. from right here. And last but not least, let's get the picture. How about that? So let's get the URL of the picture. Entry picture. Remember, this is just a URL. It's not yet an image, but we'll get to the image part in a second. Good. All right, so here are our variables. Now what we need to do is we need to create HTML elements to put them into in JavaScript. So we're going to start with the desktop version in this part, and then what we could do later is we could modify it to be different on desktop and mobile. I'll show you how to do that in a future tutorial. But for this one, we're just going to handle the desktop. So I think if we have 2 posts per row, that'll be good. Okay. So what we need to do here is we need to tell the loop how often it should make a new row. Remember, a row is the Bootstrap class that's attributed to each row on the screen. So it should be a new row when it's when current index is an odd number, or excuse me, an even number. 0 is an even number. So we can check if current index modulo 2 is equal to 0. Remember, that means it's even. Otherwise, it's odd. So every time it's an even number, we want it to create a new row. Okay. Now, if we put the row variable in here, it's going to overwrite it every time we loop through. So let's create a new local variable in the function above here called current row. It's just going to be a pointer for now. All right. So in here we'll say current row is equal to document.createElement div. Okay. Cool. Now we can use a jQuery function to add some class names pretty easily. So money sign parentheses current row. Oops. Dot add class row. All right, that'll add the class of row to the div current row, which is good. That's the same thing as doing this in HTML. Okay. All right, and if it's odd, we don't want to do anything. We want to keep current row, so that's good. All right, so we have current row taken care of. Okay, we also want to append current row to our main div here. So we wanted to do document.getElementById, and its main container. Did I do camel? I forgot. No, all lowercase. Main container dot append child current row. All right, so we have our row being appended to our main document here, but it's not doing anything, so we need to put some stuff into it. All right, so underneath, let's make separate text nodes for these two. So we'll say variable title equals document.createElement. It'll be a P. And then we'll do the money sign. This is strictly for CSS purposes right now, so don't worry about it. Cool. And then we need to set the inner HTML of title to be our entry title. Fantastic. Okay, we're also going to want to append this to the current row, aren't we? Oh no, actually, before we do that, we need to make a new column. So right above, we do variable column equals document.createElement. Remember, columns are divs, so there's that. And then column.addClass. So if there's going to be 2, it needs to be col-md-6. Right, and then we would append that to our current row. All right, and then we can append title to the column. Column.appendChild title. Fantastic. All right, so we also need the description. We'll do it like that. Equals document.createElement, and it'll be a p tag. And we'll say money sign descript dot add class. This is again for CSS purposes. Okay, And then we need descript.innerHTML is equal to entry description. Cool. And then we need to append the description to our column. Great. All right, last thing. What do we want to do with this image? Let's load it. Why the heck not? So we'll do image document.createElement image. We do need to change the source to be our new URL, so we'll need entry picture URL. And I did spell it wrong. There we go. Okay. I'm also going to add a class to this. We'll call it picture. And then we don't want any inner HTML, so we're done with that. Let's just go ahead and append it to our column. Image. Okay, so let's just double check everything we got. We set up some variables. We appended the current row to main container if we had to create it, otherwise it's still there. We made a new column. We appended title to that column, description to that column, and image to that column. All right, very cool. So if all goes according to plan, we should have loaded 8 entries, which is solid, right? And let's go ahead and just kind of see what that looks like so we know what we're working with. So what we need to do is we kind of need to save this and then upload our whole folder to our Google Drive account. It's going to require us to go ahead and delete this. And I'm going to upload first index.html. And then I'm going to upload the other 3 folders. So we'll do CSS first. And then we'll do fonts. And then we'll do JavaScript. And let's just wait till it's all done. And waiting, and waiting. Errors. What is your error? Server rejected. What did it reject? Oh, I don't know. But now it works. That was weird. Okay. Let's see what happens. So there are a couple problems with some of the code, which is fine for now. We can work through debugging in a little bit. You know, this is all to do with which properties we read off of the data and how we parse it, but we're not going to focus on that now. But you can see that the Facebook posts are here. What you can also see is that when you get to the bottom, it doesn't actually load more. So that's what we're going to work on in this tutorial, and then we'll work on making it look nice in the next one. So to handle infinite scrolling, we need to put a scroll handler on our window. There's a great jQuery function for that. By the way, you can find the jQuery documentation pretty easily. Here's the documentation, which is great. We actually need scroll top. Okay, so this is part of the function that we need. I'm actually going to pull it from another project that I'm doing, my own, because I'm using infinite scrolling in our Spotlight web version. Can't see that yet, though. It's in progress. Of course, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. And I actually put this all in a document ready. So let me just copy this real quick and I'll show you what it does. Okay, so here's what we need first. So document ready runs this function only when the document has been loaded, which we want to include. Otherwise, it'll just infinite scroll before it's loaded, and that's bad. All right, so here's document.ready. That's pretty standard. And then money_window.bind binds something on the scroll event for the window, and that something is what's in this function. So that's great, right? Okay, so what we want to do is we want to do a number of things. We can either check to see if the window's going to be, if the scroll distance is going to be a certain height based on the content, we can just check for that here. If we want to include a marker in our JavaScript code that tells it when to scroll again, we can include that. For these purposes, I think we're fine just checking the scroll distance because it's not really that far if you remembered what it looked like. You know, this is really only like 1, 2, 3. It's like 3 screens worth. So it doesn't need to scroll that far, and we'll just check it like that for now. All right, so the way that you check it is like this. If this dot scroll top. Okay. What this does is it returns the value of the offset that the window is currently experiencing. And if you go up, that offset is, let's see if I do this, is positive, and if you go down, it's negative. So we want to check if it's greater than. And this is actually pretty easy if you set the height of all of your columns, which we could do, and it looks like it didn't actually give us 2 columns, which we'll have to fix in a little bit. We could do. But right now, I'm just going to set it equal to, let's say, 1,000, just to get the idea. Okay. The problem is 1,000 is going to trigger every single time, so we really don't want to do that. Let's check to see if the window is scrolled to the bottom. Check to see if window is scrolled to bottom jQuery. Oh, looks like we found it. It's right here. Gotta love the internet. Okay, so we actually already have our functionality set up to do this. We've already set current index to be a new value, so actually all we need to do is call load data again. Let's check it out. Oh, I don't think index.html was finished loading. What happened? Google Drive. What did? Oh, there's 2 of them. I forgot to delete the old one. That's what it was. Don't make that mistake. Okay, maybe I should delete both and try again. It's uploaded. All right, so here is, you can see the scroll bar on the side over there will tell you how much content is scrolled. And then when we get to a certain point, the bottom, nothing happens. Okay. Did we do it right? Load data. Let's see how many times it's logging entries. I want to make sure it's firing the function actually. Nope, it's not firing it. Okay, looks like we need to test real quick. So console.log bottom. Let's just check to make sure it's firing before we go too crazy. Sometimes it's just difficult to get this particular function to fire. Or in this case, to get it to run at all, what did I do? There we go. Yes, it's not running at all. Okay. Window.bind scroll. Let's make sure that the scroll is binding. Wow, this video is really long. Sorry about that. You guys must be really bored. Pause it and go stretch or something. Okay, come back. So you could have paused it, and I actually just set it back to back, so it's funny. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, it's not actually binding anything. Okay, why is window bind not actually firing? We're scrolling the window. Why is it not doing anything? This is very strange indeed. Style of null is in JavaScript 93? No, it's not. No. Interesting. Well, there's clearly something wrong with the way that we're binding this, so maybe we just take out the document ready piece real fast and see what happens. I do not suggest doing this too frequently, I will tell you. But we do need it to work for the purposes of this video not being a grand waste of time. And it's not working at all. Okay. I'm going to pause it and figure out why this isn't working. Index.html while changing the JavaScript file. Okay. Let's make sure we're not that stupid. All right. Mr. Myers, not very strong right now. Okay, let's check it out. It says that it can't, what is going on? It can't get my JS out of the JavaScript folder. Oh, because I have two of them again. God. Failing. Not very good. You guys should be booing at me right now. If you're not booing at me at the screen, do it. I can't hear you. Alright, so there we go. It's loaded. Let's see if the infinite scroll works. There we go. All right, so that's a very, again, you could see there's plenty of errors and problems with this, and you know, with something this complicated, that's going to happen, and we'll fix that later. But you guys have the idea, and it does, in fact, load the content, which is great. Next tutorial, what we'll do is we'll debug our first part here, and we'll also work on making it look a little bit nicer. But until then, I hope you enjoyed and that you'll incorporate this into some of your future projects. Bye-bye.